Hey there! It's your Lumio team again with another special session. We will be unleashing our superpowers in Lumio with an amazing lesson celebrating Comic Book Day. I am your host, Asha, and I have with me two super lovely ladies, Casey and Lois. We have two special things happening today. We have Lois, go ahead.
Well, we had an awesome interview with Raúl the Third, who is a great author and illustrator for the Vamos book series and several others.
Sweet. That's exciting. And Casey, what do you have planned for us?
Well, I'm excited. We have a lot of great activities lined up, all about how you can use ready-made resources from the Lumio library, like a comic book page, how you can use the power of a blank page, and some great games to get your kids excited and thinking and engaged in their learning.
Awesome, awesome. It's going to be a great session today. Well, without further ado, let's jump into this special interview with Raúl the Third, a New York Times best-selling and three-time Pura Belpré award-winning illustrator, author, and artist. Vamos, Let's Cross the Bridge was awarded one of the year's best illustrated children's books of 2021 from the New York Times and the New York Public Library. We asked Raul a little bit about his process and his experience with Lumio. So here he is.
Thanks for joining us today, Raúl, to talk a little bit about how you can draw in Lumio, and we can learn a little bit more about your Vamos series. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So first and foremost, I was messing around with Lumio yesterday, and I am a huge fan of drawing on notebook paper, and so I immediately grabbed the pen tool and scrawled down my name, Raúl the Third, and people ask me, "Hey, why is your name Raúl the Third?" And I just have to tell you, it's because I come from a long line of Raúls. My abuelito was Raúl the First. My son is Raúl the Fourth. My dad was Raúl the Second, or as my abuelita used to call him, Junior. And so I'm Raúl the Third, and there it is, right there in on the marquee on notebook paper. And I am a children's book author and illustrator. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, which is in Mexico, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's so great to have you, Raúl. What do you feel like, Raúl, is the thing that you like to draw the most?
Well, that's a great question, but also a very difficult one to answer because um, ideas are constantly out there, and you have to be ready to capture them. And so just like I mentioned a bit ago, that's why I love having notebook paper around. That's why I love having the spontaneity of being able to jot down an idea, because you never know what that next big idea is going to be. But I will say that I do have like certain things that I'm always drawing. For instance, I grew up in El Paso, as I already told you, and I was surrounded by the desert, by the Mexican culture, by American culture. And so any of those things are always inspiring me in some way or another. And as you can see from this picture right here, a big influence for me, something that got me involved and inspired me from the get-go was American pop culture. You can see that I'm wearing one of the first ever Simpsons shirts. I remember I begged my mom, please take me to Spencer's. I need that Simpsons t-shirt. And luckily enough, I had an amazing museum right around the corner from where I lived. My museum was the local 7-Eleven, and that's where I discovered comic books. And my mom, as you can see, let me draw two of my favorite characters right on this wall in the kitchen. I think, though, the real reason she let me draw on the wall in the kitchen was because she knew that just 2 weeks later, she was going to be covering that up with brand new wallpaper.
I was thinking that was a pretty brave, a pretty nice thing for a mom to do, is to let you draw right on her kitchen wall like that.
I know. She's a great mom.
So Raul,
Yeah.
I'm interested to know a little bit about how did you go from loving to draw, loving to sketch, doing the things that you were doing here in your house on your kitchen wall, to turning that into a profession, something that you do as your job?
I am the author and illustrator of this entire universe of books published by Versify and HarperCollins. The names of the books are Vamos, Let's Go to the Market, Vamos, Let's Cross the Bridge, Vamos, Let's Go Eat. And that has grown into other spin-offs like El Toro and Friends and a Coco Rocho book, which are board books. But all of these books are very much comic book inspired. As well as influenced by the frontera town, the border town that I grew up in. The books are written in both English and Spanish. There's a wonderful glossary at the end of each and every one of these books that defines the words in Spanish that were seen throughout the book. Plus, there's all sorts of very interesting and fun characters with names like Little Lobo, Kooky Dookie, La Oink Oink, Cocorocho, Armadillo, the famous Jackalope, Jack A. Lopez, on and on it goes. So it's become a pretty extensive cartoon universe that introduces students and teachers to a culture they might not be too familiar with. And that is, to me, the Mexican American culture that exists in many border towns from Texas all the way down to California.
So I know that when I have seen you in person talking about your work, your drawing, and when I saw you, you were drawing in pen, but I love how you're able to use so many different types of media to make your drawings, whether it's notebook paper or a napkin or the digital tools that you use. And I was really excited to see how you would use those tools in Lumio.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so this is a very rough sketch. These are actually the drawings that I send to my editor. So the first step that I go through is I type out a full script. So I type out a full script. I send that to my editor. She sends it back with notes, and then we begin to mold the story so that it feels right, so that it flows nicely. So once I'm done with the script, I am then I then have the task of laying out the script in picture form. So that means that I have to sketch it out. And I don't want my sketches to be too tight because they cannot be precious to me at this point, because chances are I'm going to get notes back once again from my editor, and she's either going to say, "That's perfect, Raúl, go to final art," or she's going to say, "What if?" And it's those what ifs that I have to be prepared for. So I have to be very loose and ready to change things up. And so this particular drawing, is a digital drawing. I started to lay out my drawings using an iPad, and so it just made the sending process a lot easier. I could just sketch them down on iPad and just immediately email them to my editor. So that's what you're looking at. Here's what I'm going to share with you. As a kid, I became fascinated with drawing. And so what I started to do is I started carrying paper with me. So what I would do is I would grab a sheet of paper. I would fold that piece of paper in half. Then I would grab another sheet of paper, 2, 3, 4, 5 sheets of paper. I would fold all of those in half, and then I would tuck them into each other, making what for myself? What would I make by tucking folded sheets of paper into each other?
Book.
You better not be saying paper taco either. That's right. I would make a book. I would make a book for myself. And so almost every day, me, my 2 brothers, and my mom, we would catch the bus. It was called SCAT back then, from the west side of El Paso all the way to downtown El Paso to walk over the bridge into Juarez. And so instead of just staring out into nothing, I started to keep a visual journal for myself. And so I started to create drawings that were simultaneously drawings made from observation, but at the same time, they were drawings with a splash of imagination. So they were a combination of 2 things, observation and imagination. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share with you some of the very first types of drawings that I would create. And one thing that I would love is if you would follow along with me, because I promise you, you will also be able to create this drawing right along with me. ¿Listos? ¿Canistos? Okay, let's do this.
Lita.
All right. All right. So one of the first, let me get used to this pen. Here we go. So one of the first things that I learned how to draw were these shapes here. I love drawing these. I would just start to litter my paper, the bottom half of my paper, with these shapes. I could draw sharp ones and it would look just like what I was drawing. I could draw tiny little ones. I could draw tiny little specks, and it would look like what I was staring at. Who knows? And maybe one of you watching right now can help answer this. Who knows what it is that I am drawing? Anybody?
Rocks?
Oh, that's exactly what I'm drawing. Because in El Paso, if we're rich with anything, it's rocks. We have rocks everywhere. Yeah, so that was one of the first things that I learned how to draw. But you know what? I started to pay close attention to some of the things that I would find in between the rocks. So I started to draw other little things. So for instance, let me see if I could change the point on this pen here. Oh, there we go. That's better. So then I would start to draw other things that I would see around me. So I might draw something like this, for instance. Who knows what this is?
A slingshot.
Oh, yes.
How is that?
I would always be on the lookout for sticks that look just like this one here, because one of my favorite characters as a kid was this little troublemaker known as Dennis the Menace. And so I wanted to have a slingshot just like his. And so I would draw that. Then I would notice that, there weren't just rocks and sand and sticks on the ground. Sometimes people would throw things away. So I would draw that as well. Bottles, bottle caps. Oh yeah, I remember that one day I found this, and on this particular day, I felt like the luckiest kid on the planet. And that's one of the reasons why I always keep my eyes on the ground, because you never know when you might find one of these. Who knows what that is?
Ooh, money.
Yeah, exactly. And so one thing that I started to realize, and maybe you're beginning to realize this as well, the more details I added to the ground, the more interesting my drawings became. And so then I said, well, I'm going to start drawing the plant life. There's so much cool plant life. And one thing that I started to do is I started to trace the shape of things with my finger. And I learned that if I drew a simple frown shape or a rainbow shape. I could draw one of the plants that was springing up by my feet. That was called a barrel cactus. And one day, lo and behold, my mom brought home a simple pot. The pot looked just like this. How many of you have ever seen a pot that looks just like this before? I'm sure you have.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so inside of the pot was one of the same types of plants that I had grown up around in the desert. And I learned that if you drew a simple teardrop, because I had traced it with my finger, and turned that teardrop upside down, you can draw this exact same plant. Can you tell what kind of a plant this is going to be just by looking at this shape?
Another type of cactus, paddle cactus.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So on this particular day, I noticed that this nopal had a little red bulb growing out of it. The bulb looks something like this. On the next day, I walked in, there was a little flower sprouting out of the tip of this red bulb. And I was so fascinated by this flower that I decided to walk up to it. And when I reached for it, I went, ow! And I dropped my mom's pot. And from that moment on, it had a crack right down the middle. I was just in El Paso last week, and my mom showed me this exact same pot with the exact same plant in it. She keeps it almost as if to taunt him my clumsiness from years before. And so I realized at that young age that this plant seemed a little angry. So I turned this plant into my first ever cartoon character, which I call the punk nopal. And my friend, I want to tell you this right now. I hide the punk nopal in every single World of Vamos book, in one page, in one tiny detail. There are kids who find the punk nopal right away, but there are others who are still looking for him to this very day. So I look forward to finding out how quickly you were able to find our succulent friend. There he is. And that's your drawing lesson for today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Raul. It has been such a pleasure to collaborate with you on this and learn a little more history about how you got started and what drives you to create. I think that spreading your message of just trying and doing new things will really help little learners learn all new things that could possibly change the trajectory of their life.
That is amazing. I love the drawing that he did. Super amazing interview. We actually have the full interview, and that will be at go.smarttech.com/livestream. So you can watch the full interview and see the whole thing and the whole process. But I loved how he used Lumio in that workspace to create that image there, that drawing. You can also follow Raul on Twitter, and that's at Raúl the Third, and that's RAULTHE, the number 3RD. Or you can follow him on IG, and that's Raúl the Third Vamos, and that's all spelt out RAULTHETHIRDVAMOS. Now, you have to stick around because we also have a super fun lesson with some really cool activities that you can use with your students in the classroom.
Thanks, Asha. Super excited to be with you today, Lois. I feel like I'm a little underdressed though.
Well, I have to hide who I am with my superpowers, but vamos, let's get started.
That sounds great. So anyone that's here can join our session live so you can get the student perspective. You can go to hellosmart.com, join us as a guest and enter my class ID 11311. You will see that scrolling along the bottom of the screen as well. But again, hellosmart.com, join as a guest and you can enter class ID 11311 to join our lesson live. All right, so let's get started. So I know, Lois, one of your favorite activities is the Shout It Out. You want to share a little bit about what Shout It Out is?
Sure. So Shout It Out is a really easy way to get quick responses from your students without everyone shouting it out. Although, if I'm being honest, being quiet is not my superpower. So I tend to shout things out at the same time, but I'm working on it.
That's awesome. So we actually had our Lumio team share some of their favorite comic book heroes earlier today. So these are some of their responses. What I love about Shout It Out is you can set it up where you have text responses, which is what you're seeing right now. I know Captain Underpants is one of my personal kids' favorite books and my students as well. They loved that. They thought he was so funny. But I love how we could magnify different answers as they're coming in. On your end, you may be seeing that you can't participate in this Shout It Out because this one has ended, but I'll show you what it looks like from the student perspective in just a moment. But I love that we can have people join us. I love that I can sort. So if we have similar categories, we can move these around. So it's really neat that we can play around with the data as it comes in, with the content as it comes in. But in addition to having text-dependent shout-outs, we can also create an activity where your students can share images as well. So I'm going to start this shout-out for the class. So what you're going to see on your end is a little white box that you can add images to. So what you would do is you'd want to go find a picture of your favorite comic book hero and save it to your device, and then you can upload it and share it out with the rest of us. So I love with the Shout It Out that we can decide to have it to have our students share text or have our students share images. My second graders used to love to use this to go on a polygon hunt around our classroom. So they take pictures of different things in our classroom and then share those up for all of us to compare. And then we'd sort the polygons, which was really nice as well. What's your favorite way to use Shout It Out, Lois?
So when I was in the classroom, I actually had a chalkboard, but if I had Lumio when I was in the classroom, one of the things that I love teaching English is giving students the option of what novel we were going to read, kind of explaining what the goal was. So they would come up to the board and write what book they wanted to read, but this would have saved so much time if they could have just popped that book up there or even pop a picture of the book, right?
Exactly. I love that point. It would be great. And look at this one that already has come in. I love that we can, again, click on them and they magnify for us. So we see Ant-Man and we see Spider-Man. What's really also very nice about a Shout It Out is we can click on the settings icon on my left as a teacher, and I can choose to display names or I can hide names so that my students can feel comfortable sharing without any judgment from their peers. So I love to turn display names off so my students are free to share without any worry. And then we can always turn those names back on when I'm not displaying this for my students, which is great. So that's a Shout It Out. Again, you can do text, you can do images. And what's neat too is you can do customized backgrounds. So you can see I made this great background using Canva, one of my favorite tools. And then I just downloaded it as a picture so that I could throw it up here. Oh, Superman's a good one as well.
My hero.
Yeah. So moving along, one of my other favorite things that Lumio has is they have a plethora, and you guys can hit start on your end. I'll hit student progress. As a teacher, this is an individual handout. Any page can be turned in to one of three activities: an individual handout, a collaborative, a group workspace, or a whole class whiteboard. What's great about the individual handout is I actually have a teacher version, so I can click on that and have that displaying as I'm talking to you about it. So this is an activity that can be found in our Lumio library. We have a variety of graphic organizers that you can use and customize and make your own. And what's great is now your students can take these, and you'll notice that all of these icons, all these images, are able to be resized. They're able to be, we have endless amounts, so we can add over different objects. We can, like I said, make them bigger or smaller. You can really personalize any object or text or number that you put on here. You can make an infinitely cloned object, so your students have as many as they need to sort of create their comic or fill in a graphic organizer or whatever you have going for your students. And what's great is I see all of my students listed here. So every time someone hits start, I'm going to see their name register, and then I can pop in. So I see Lois has a little check mark. She's indicating to me that she's done with her activity. So if I click on hers, I can come and see how she's doing. And what's neat as a teacher is I can give real-time feedback as well. So I could come in and give her a little check mark. If I wanted, I could leave her a message. I could even help her by adding additional content. You'll see too that I see in real time as my students are adding content as well. So I have that real time ability to check in with my students, which I love. So that's an easy thing for me to check on. Oh, this is great. And I could even send I could even add a little image. Let's do a being safe search. Great job. So I can search for a great job, and I can post that on their work, giving them a little feedback too. So digital stickers, text, all sorts of things, which is pretty neat. Now, I don't know about you, Lois, but I think one of the key things about all of the content that's for free in our Lumio library is it can be customized. And so we have a great representation of that from something you did earlier using Raúl the Third's characters. So tell us a little bit about what you did on this page.
Absolutely. So all I did is pull in some photos and make them infinitely clonable at the top, just like the previous one we showed. And so basically you can pull the characters down and use the text bubbles to kind of create your own comic of what you think should happen with Raúl's characters. And then in the last space, I was kind of thinking like, let's build a story. And then the last frame is how everything ends up. So I actually locked that in place so students would not be able to move that. Well, you would be able to move it as a teacher, but you can lock that into place so that it doesn't move. But again, you have all the characters up there and you can create your very own Vamos.
So Lois used the exact same graphic organizer that I did. There's different versions of it, so you can have slightly different backgrounds and whatnot. But all she did was change those kids to these characters and then infinitely cloned them. But she kept the same text boxes. The same speech bubbles. She kept the same backgrounds available. So I love that you can customize. The other thing to note is right now you'll notice that as a student, you don't have any tools to start to work on this page. That's because I have it set to view only. In real time, you can also convert pages. So if I click on my class management tool on the left side, when I click on that, I can choose to make this an individual handout, to make it a group workspace. So if we wanted to create a comic together, or to make it a whole class whiteboard, I'll go ahead and make it a group workspace. So just like this, it's going to allow me to put you guys into teams. So if I was doing this with students, it'll say, however many teams you have, you can decide how many students you have, you can decide how many teams to do. So I think I'm going to do 2 teams, and it's going to automatically throw my students into teams. I can rearrange if I would like to. And then once I have the teams created the way that I want, I can hit Start Workspace. And what's neat is you guys can actually be working remotely. So we're all coming from different parts of the world. I know, for example, Marit is someone I know and work with as one of our Lumio ambassadors, and I know she's coming from Finland. And I know here I am in Texas, but we can see this work happening in real time. And I can even see who's collaborating and adding content as well. So it's really neat that you can put students together in teams, whether they're in the classroom together or whether they're coming and meeting from around the world. Anything you want to add there, Lois?
I had never used this template before and I really loved it. One of the things that I found was really great is I was able to add this to my Lumio library. And once I found the page that I wanted to use, I was actually able to just share that one page with you to add to your lesson. So it really makes collaborating between teachers really great as well, because I know when I was in the classroom, I never had an original idea. I always built on other people's ideas. So it's really great for collaboration between educators as well.
You're so right. So Lois created the comic, this comic strip right here. I had the rest of the lesson. She sent it to me this morning and I was able to pop it into my lesson without a problem, which is really, really nice. That collaboration piece you speak of is great. All right, so moving along, one of the other things that I love is just giving students the power of a blank page. So if you watched our interview with Raúl the Third, you noticed that he was using a blank space to do his drawing. And so I love that we have the power of giving students full creation mode. So sometimes I like to give my students some constraints, some parameters, using things like that graphic organizer we were just looking at. But sometimes I like to give my students just the power of this space and let their creativity fly. And what's nice is right here, again, I can convert this page either when I'm editing and creating the lesson or on the fly like I am now. And let's do a whole class whiteboard. Why not? Since we've already looked at handouts and group workspaces. So a whole class whiteboard allows everyone to be in the same space right now. And what's great is you'll notice that you have all these great tools. So you can use that pen tool like Raúl was using to draw. So if I wanted to use that pen tool, I could do that, right? But I could also use the power of our endless shapes over here to create things also. So if I want to create a house, for example, I could maybe use my rectangle shape and use that to start to draw. And I could use my circle to draw if I want to draw a little stick figure. So you can use the power of the tools that you have, not just the pen tool, but the shape and line tools as well. And look, do we have Raúl the Third in here with us? Because wow, look at Lois go. Have you been practicing your drawings?
I have been practicing. I think I'm getting better. I just say yes now.
That's fantastic. And I love to notice that someone added an image. Steve added an image too. So our students can use the power of the pen tool, the power of the being safe search, and the power of the shapes and lines to create their image, which is really, really nice. And look, we're all in this space together. So we're doing a shared drawing, which I think is really neat too.
Absolutely.
And I don't know about you, Lois, but when I was in the classroom, anytime I had the power to pause my students, that was great. So you'll notice up here, I can toggle off, everyone can edit, and that means that students can no longer contribute content. So if I need them to pause to listen to directions again, or to get some more feedback, or maybe we're going to start and then I want them to talk about something with their partners before we finish, I can always pause that contribution, which is great. Or if I want to share this for students to access at home, and I don't want them to be able to message on a shared space like this when they're at home and I'm not watching over the space, then I can turn off the editing ability and students can still see it to reference for homework or review, but they can't add more content.
Yeah, I love that. And it's also a really great way to share classwork with parents as well, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I always had parents that would like to help their children with their work. So it's really kind of a really nice way to show like what you've been working on. And then if they want to help their children, they could do it on notebook paper, right?
Love it. Yes, absolutely. And it's important, that blended learning, right? Being able to do some things digitally and some things with paper, pencil, or with other tools as well. So speaking of that, one of my favorite tools to use is one of our game-based activities called Flip Out. And that's what you see here. You can actually hit start on your end. Flip Out was created to be a digital flashcard. So if we wanted our students to review vocabulary words or math facts, things like that, this would be a great tool. But I love to use them to create choice boards. So I might say to my students, hey, you need to do 3 activities out of these 8 that you see here. You need to have one activity, 3 different activities. So if you, based on the opening card, you need to pick 3 different ones. So I can't have 2 pows or 2 cracks. I have to have 3 different with these onomatopoeia words. So my student might click and decide, I want to do these 3 activities. And you'll notice that these don't have to be done digitally. So for example, use blocks or Legos or things you might have in your makerspace to have students create a super vehicle for a superhero. Or choose 2 words from a favorite book and create a superhero based on those 2 words and think about what their superpower would be. Not something that could be done digitally, right? You could use like Google Drawings or something, or it could be or Lumio with that blank power of the blank page, or it might be something that a student might want to really do with paper and pencil or paper and markers and crayons. So I love that ability to really blended learning using lots of different tools with students.
Oh, so we have a comment saying that this teacher uses flip cards to brainstorm ideas. Mr. Mohammed says, I think that's a really great use of it as well.
I love that idea. So one of the things I will say, we have 12 different game-based templates, I would say look at those game-based templates through your lens of what you're teaching, of what you're trying to accomplish, because you can be really creative with how you use those tools. So I love that idea of brainstorming. Another way that I've used Flip Out is I actually have used it to introduce a new topic. So I would have different clues. So I might have clue number 1, clue number 2, and might have like 5 or 6 clues. And so we'll flip over clue number 1 and it'll be kind of vague to get my kids thinking, and they'll put down their guess of what they think we're going to be studying. And then I'll flip over card number 2 and they'll have a chance to scratch out if they think their guess changed or put a new guess or keep their guess. And then we keep going until we finally get to the big reveal. So there's lots of ways to use all of these different games in creative ways.
That sounds like another great use for Shout It Out, right? So if you have your activity on student pace, they can move up and down throughout your lesson. So you could have the Shout It Out running and they could go back to look and then come back and guess, and you could group them by correct or incorrect. That would be a really fun activity, I think.
I love that. That does sound like a lot of fun. So I love, be creative with how you use these game-based activities. There's so many options. Every game works for every grade level because it's how you use it, the content you put into play. So really think about that as you're exploring those 12 different game templates we have. Speaking of games, I thought we would have to end with a great game. Monster Quiz is a favorite by students and teachers and adults alike. I know I have some friends who've used this even for game nights with their families, which is really fun as well. I'm going to start this superhero quiz. So what's great about Monster Quiz is we're dividing you into teams. So you are part of a team. We'll do 2 teams again. But each of you has to answer the questions independently, but together you're working to break your monster out of its box or its crate. So it's going to throw you into those teams. Again, we can rearrange our students however we need to. Then you hit Start Quiz. And just like that, you're going to see the questions coming up. You see that you can answer them individually. We can see if you're getting your answers right or wrong. What's great are those questions come back around, so you get to see them more than once. So if you miss one, it's not a problem. Students will see that question pop back up. Monster Quiz is a great way to review. I actually love to use Monster Quiz as a pre-assessment because this is low stakes for a pre-assessment, right? Kids will have fun doing this and not so much worry about whether they're getting answers right or wrong. And we can really talk about pre-assessments to help me as the teacher drive instruction for the unit and understand where my students are starting. And this is a way that they can feel safe, risk free to kind of play around and play around with that new content. And what's great is students will see their results at the end, and then you could play this game again at the end as a post assessment or right before your review for a test. And students can see how they've grown from that pre-assessment to that post-assessment.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really love is the immediacy. You can see when students are getting the answers correct and when they're not. And I was on a roll and then I just started getting some wrong. So I'm really hoping Peyton helps me out here and lets us hatch our monster first.
Yeah, so you'll see when someone gets it right, we will show the name like, congrats, Asha, good job. But if they get it wrong, you'll see the monster box shake like that just happened to the crate crushers. We don't know who missed that question, but we do know a question was missed because it shook their box rather than that correct answer we just saw Lois and Peyton get. And again, you can see as we're getting closer, crate crushers are ahead of the heat scorchers right now, but not by a ton. You can see that we have a monster arm starting to pop up in the crate crushers box, which is really fun. The other thing that's great is you can have music playing. I have it muted right now, but you can unmute it and have that music playing, which intensifies the experience for the kids as well. But I'll tell you, whether you're doing this with adult learners or students, they love it and they have so much fun. And what I love is I can end the quiz at any time. So if I'm running out of time, maybe we have to go, good job, Crate Crushers. If I need to end the quiz, I can go ahead and do that. I don't have to wait for everyone to finish. So if I want to review before the end of class or the bell rings, I can do that. You'll see on your end, you know how you've done, what answers you got correct or incorrect. Overall, I can see, so the crate crushers got the answers correct 70% of the time the first time and finished in 2 minutes and 24 seconds. And heat scorchers were getting them right about 50% of the time on the first go round. And then we can also click on class review and I can decide which ones I need to focus on. Like question 1 and 2, most everyone knew the answers to. But if we look down at question 4, that one, you can look at the pie chart and see that one, not very many people had that right answer. So we can spend time focusing and reviewing with the students on the ones that class seemed to struggle the most on and not spend as much time on the ones they got correct. Monster Quiz is super easy, and I'm not going to lie, I actually use ChatGPT to help me write the quiz questions, which was really, really nice. So I was able to just copy and paste those questions and answers into Monster Quiz.
That's using your resources wisely. Good job.
So
I love it.
See some fun ways to use Lumio with your students. There's so many options available to you.
Awesome. This activity, especially the monster quiz, I was so happy that there was Marvel questions. Mind you, I got one of them wrong, but awesome, awesome activities. Well, to access these lessons, you can find them if you go to go.smarttech.com/livestream. And all of the lessons from all of our live streams will be there, along with the previous recordings that we've done and the full interview with Raúl the Third. If you haven't actually gotten started with Lumio yet, you can do that for free if you visit lum.io. Thanks again, ladies. Great lesson. I think the interview with Raúl was super inspiring, and I think we had a great session today. Happy Comic Book Day.
Happy Comic Book Day. It's a fun day.
Indeed.